An adorable street cat wanders into the Dior fashion show in Istanbul, Turkey, and shocks everyone present by demonstrating the true meaning of the catwalk. But no one expected what would happen next. At the international fashion show from Istanbul, Turkey, there was a surprise when a special model appeared on the catwalk. Among dozens of beautiful girls in expensive dresses, a fluffy model appeared, who sat right in the middle of the podium, exactly where human models were supposed to pass. The newcomer turned out to be a black and white cat. The kitten began to lick itself, ignoring the hundreds of people in the hall or the models passing by. The guards looked at each other in disbelief, wondering if they should step in and chase the cat away. However, the laughter and applause of the guests convinced them that the kitten should stay on the show. The model girls quickly realized what was going on and made way for the cat to stay. After the cat finished her toilet, she decided to shock everyone present by demonstrating how to walk the catwalk properly. She walked smoothly down the runway like a royal and stopped halfway to enjoy the attention of the guests. She showed everyone what it means to be a real model. However, her playful feline nature soon manifested itself. She was attracted by a piece of clothing hanging on one of the models. Distracted from her main goal, walking down the runway, she followed her natural instincts and attacked this detail with her paw, forcing the girl to hastily retreat to protect the dress. Not satisfied, the cat headed to the end of the catwalk, but her antics didn't end there. The kitten wanted to attract all the attention to itself and tried to stop the model, who was concentrating on leaving the podium. She playfully attacked a passing girl, perhaps hoping for affection. Unfortunately, the model ignored her. The audience was delighted with the show, and the organizers were a little worried that the cat was distracting attention from the dresses that the models were showing. However, designer G.S. Hacker was amazed by the cat's ability to attract everyone's attention without suppressing models or disrupting the show. In an interview with journalists, the designer said that, in his opinion, this cat could have a future in the fashion industry and, perhaps, become the one who will update it. Before the end of the show, the cat approached some viewers for affection and played a little. Despite the fact that she was clearly homeless, she behaved gently and sweetly, enjoying everyone's attention for a few minutes, and then with a perfect model walk she left. But this was not the end of the story about the charming model. One of the viewers fell in love with the cat and wanted to take her home. Emily and her husband Mark were looking for a kitten after the show closed, but they almost missed her. She was nowhere to be seen, and they became increasingly worried. Turkey is known for its population of stray cats, and despite the fact that locals try to protect and take care of them, there is always a risk that one of them will get into a road accident. Emily and Mark were from the United States and found the interaction between stray animals and people in Istanbul truly exciting. In particular, all cats there belong to everyone and no one at the same time. They roam freely wherever they want, and often receive affection and food from local residents. This is probably why our little model felt so confident in a large hall filled with people, while cats from other parts of the world might be too shy to enter. In addition, by receiving a constant supply of food, cats in Turkey are protected by law. Anyone who harms or kills them can be imprisoned. But animal welfare activists still believe that cats should have a safe home where people will take care of them. Emily agreed with this and therefore wasn't going to give up so easily. She spent the entire evening in the area, setting up feeders to find the kitten. Fortunately, a street vendor in the area had a bag of dry food for sale, and she happily bought it. However, it was not easy to find a fluffy model. because the city is teeming with stray cats. Other kittens came up and rubbed their furry bodies against her legs, begging for affection. Mark was almost tempted to take one of them home because of their charm, but Emily was adamant. She wanted that cat from the catwalk and no other. But the evening was coming to an end, and the little model did not show up. Saddened, Mark and Emily decided to stop searching, but when they were about to leave, they heard meowing near the car door. It was her, the runaway kitty. Emily was excited, but didn't want to scare her off with excessive zeal, so she took some food out of her pocket and carefully handed it to the cat. The cat happily ate the treat, and then jumped into the back seat of their car. She seemed to know that they were looking for her everywhere, and now that she had found them, she felt at home. Emily tried to explain to her that they wanted to take her home, but the kitty was already fast asleep in the back seat. Emily took this as a good sign and asked Mark to go to their apartment. Having reached the rented apartment through the Airbnb, the sleepy kitty wandered around and felt as comfortable as a domestic cat. She looked too relaxed for a stray animal, and the couple began to suspect that the cat had lived in the house for some time in the past. Emily wanted to make sure that the cat no longer had owners, so she examined it for any identification marks, but unfortunately found nothing. Therefore, she immediately began the process of adopting a cat. But first she had to come up with a name for her new pet. Not knowing which name would suit her best, Emily decided to give the cat the opportunity to choose a name on her own. She sat down next to her and said a few names to test the cat's reaction. "Emmy," she called out, but the cat didn't react. "Ginger." This time, the cat meowed in response and patted Emily as if approving of the name. She wrapped her paws around Emily's leg and fell asleep. Ginger became a new member of the family, but it seemed that she was always with them and would not go anywhere. The following days, the couple took her to the vet for a full checkup before the long trip to the United States. At the vet's appointment, Ginger was lively and playful. Since the video of her catwalk stunt went viral on social media, everyone was excited to see the celebrity firsthand. She didn't mind the attention and was happy to be the center of attention again. Fortunately, she was as healthy as any street cat and seemed to be doing just fine. Emily was glad to hear that Ginger was okay. She thought she had overcome the biggest obstacle in their journey, but a big surprise awaited her. The veterinarian did not have sufficient information about the process of importing pets to the United States from another country. The rules for the entry of animals into the country are regulated by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Therefore, Emily began a race against time to fulfill the conditions of these agencies before her departure to the United States. First she had to make Ginger a microchip. It took longer than she expected to find a place to do it. With the help of an animal welfare organization, she eventually managed to implant Ginger with a microchip. The next step was vaccination. Rabies vaccination was one of the most important things Ginger needed to leave Turkey and enter any other country. Traveling without vaccinations would have been risky for Emily, as Ginger could have been quarantined at the point of entry, and if she had been allowed to board the plane at all. Airlines have their own rules regarding vaccination. It was planned to vaccinate Ginger and do an antibody test to make sure that her body had developed the necessary immunity. Emily was willing to pay for this procedure, despite the high cost. Unfortunately, she faced another problem. After the vaccination, Ginger had to wait up to 8 weeks before she could be tested for an antibody and declared ready to travel. 2 months is not such a long time, but Emily's flight to the United States was only 7 days away. Tears welled up in her eyes when she wondered whether to leave her beloved kitty or cancel the flight and wait for her. She knew she couldn't put off going home indefinitely, but she also knew she didn't want Ginger to be on the street again. She decided to get vaccinated anyway and at the same time start looking for alternatives. After Ginger's vaccination, Emily began the difficult task of finding a family who could look after the cat until she was ready to travel to the United States. Ginger's infectious personality made this easier, with several people volunteering to look after her while waiting to leave. Nevertheless, Emily wanted to choose the best family for her pet. In the end, she settled on Era, a woman in her 50s, a volunteer from an animal rescue organization who helped implant the Ginger chip. Era also had a cat and a small dog, so Ginger wouldn't be alone. Era assured that she would call every day and inform about the cat. Emily's flight was scheduled for 5 p.m. the next day, so after she left Ginger, she had to go back to the apartment and pack her things. Saying goodbye was a difficult moment. She hugged her cat tightly and promised that she would come back for her. Ginger, who was usually cheerful, seemed sullen that morning, as if she felt that something was wrong. When she got to the foster family, she clung to Emily tightly and did not want to let go. It took Era's intervention to separate her from Emily. All this time, Ginger was expressing dissatisfaction with the whole situation, meowing as if in pain, and growling as if she had been offended, and she wanted everyone to know about it. Era had experience caring for foster cats, so she calmed Ginger down and brought her into the house. Emily was crying bitterly in the car, and Mark was comforting her. She was overwhelmed with emotions, but hoped that in a few weeks Ginger would finally be at home with her. That day, Emily boarded a flight and said goodbye to the city that had given her a new family member. While Emily was flying, Ginger found a place for herself under Era's bed and quietly hid. The once cheerful kitty was now staying away. Era tried to cheer her up in every possible way, but Ginger didn't eat or make contact. Era was worried about the cat's reaction, and she was ready to call the vet, but first she called someone else who could certainly cheer Ginger up. As soon as Emily landed in the USA, Era dialed her number. Hearing the hostess's voice on the speakerphone, Ginger ran out from under the bed and meowed loudly. Despite such a short time spent with Emily, she became so attached to her. Emily was hurt to hear that Ginger was not coping with the situation, but she tried to persuade her to eat. In the following days, the cat finally started accepting treats and no longer hid from Era. Emily could breathe a sigh of relief knowing that she was fine. Despite the time difference, she called to talk to Ginger every day. The cat began to expect these calls and climbed onto Era's desk as soon as she heard the phone ring. At this stage, the adoption process was going smoothly. The rabies test results were ready and the veterinarian confirmed that Ginger had developed the necessary antibodies. The last and most important step remained. Emil needed to get the necessary documents to adopt the cat and take it out of the country. The Turkish Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, Orman Baykal, was responsible for the preparation of these documents. Working with a veterinarian in Istanbul, Emil received the necessary documents to request permission to export the cat, but then 2 weeks passed without a response from the department, and she naturally began to worry. Emily contacted the veterinarian she worked with to track the progress of the case, and he was able to find out that the application period was 3 months. Emily was devastated to hear the news. Her husband Mark also began to worry, fearing that all these troubles could affect his wife's health. So he decided to explore ways to speed up the whole process. At that time, his good friend Vlad was traveling in Europe, and Mark asked him to stop by Istanbul if possible and check on how things were going. However, Mark did not tell his wife about this. He hoped to surprise her and bring Ginger to the USA for her birthday. So the countdown began to speed up the process. Vlad arrived in the country and took up this case with special interest, because he also loved animals. He soon found out that the documents were almost ready, and Mark bought a plane ticket for Ginger. She had to undergo another vet checkup to make sure she was healthy enough to travel. Fortunately, she successfully passed the test again. With this great success, the last hurdle was overcome. Ginger was finally returning home. On the day of departure, she happily climbed into the carrier. Era took her to the airport and watched as the airline staff took away the carrier with the cat. It was a bitty and sweet moment. On the one hand, she was glad that Ginger would finally be reunited with her forever family, but on the other, she was sad to part with this special kitty. Vlad said goodbye to them and boarded the flight. The plan to reunite Ginger with Emily was put into action. However, the group had to overcome one last obstacle. The long flight from Istanbul to the USA coincided with the scheduled call from Emily Ari. Era watched her phone ring with a pang in her heart, but forced herself not to answer so as not to spoil the surprise. Emily's anxiety was off the scale that day. She was 36 years old, and the only thing she wanted was a long conversation with her beloved cat. However, it seemed that this wish would not come true. She already wanted to cancel the whole party because of her spoiled mood, but Mark convinced her to celebrate her birthday anyway. In the end, she agreed. Mark decorated the yard and invited some friends. He was constantly checking his phone, waiting for news of Vlad's arrival, and Emily began to suspect something, but she decided that he had just prepared a special birthday present for her, and in order not to spoil the surprise, she decided not to pay attention to his suspicious behavior for now. When it was time to sing happy birthday, her friends gathered around and asked her to make a wish. She closed her eyes and thought about her beloved kitty. And suddenly something touched her leg. When Emily opened her eyes and looked down, she couldn't hold back the tears. It was Ginger. "How?" she exclaimed through her sobs. Mark said that he sent Vlad to personally monitor the progress of the case and speed up the process. In 36 years of her life, this was the first time that Emily's wish came true in a few seconds. She was so grateful to her family and friends, and couldn't wait to introduce everyone to Ginger. Now Emily could breathe easy, because her family was gathered. And when she returned to the house, a second surprise awaited her: a whole room fully equipped for Ginger, a scratching post, a cat tree, a tunnel, and shelves on the walls. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes when she saw this room. She knew that her husband was renovating a spare room, but she did not expect that he would put so much effort into creating the perfect place for a new family member. Ginger quickly got used to the new room and chose her favorite place on the cat's cot. She was still exhausted from the long flight and fell asleep again, but when Emily left the room to let her rest, Ginger meowed loudly in protest. Apparently, she was afraid that her beloved mistress would leave her again. Emily hugged the cat tightly and assured her that she was now at home and would never be separated from her family again. After a video of a stray cat interrupting a fashion show went viral on the internet in 2018, it regularly surfaced online, becoming news again each time. Although Jean Gear never became a fashion icon and was unable to walk the catwalks, she found something much more valuable: forever a home. What a touching ending for a cat with such a brave character. Are you ready to go to the ends of the earth for a pet? Tell us in the comments. Thank you for watching and see you soon.